Hey, I'm Kylee, former NICU travel nurse and founder of Passports and Preemies, and you're listening to Clocked Out, Life Beyond the Bedside. This podcast is for nurses who are ready to ask, what else is out there for me? Each week, we dive into what it means to thrive as a nurse beyond the hospital walls through conversations about burnout, alternative careers, travel, financial freedom, and wellness. Whether you're deep in burnout or just craving more freedom, you're in the right place. It's time to redefine what life after clocking out really looks like. I am very excited about today's show because today I am speaking with a guest who truly embodies the spirit of this podcast. She is a former nurse who stepped away from the bedside, found financial freedom, and is now helping other nurses doing the same with their money. April is the founder of Nurse Money Date, where she helps nurses build wealth through weekly money dates, fun, emotionally grounded check ins rooted in money psychology that help you feel more connected to your finances. After a 7-year career in healthcare, primarily in pediatric ICU, she stepped away from the bedside in her 20s. By that time, she and her husband, Harrison, were completely debt free and had grown their combined investment portfolio to over $500,000 goals. April is now a certified financial education instructor and finance coach, and she's passionate about helping nurses create financial freedom on their own terms. Originally born in the Philippines, raised in Chicago, and now living in Sydney, Australia, April's story is such a powerful reminder that there is no one right way to be a nurse. In this episode, April and I talk about financial freedom, what nurses should know about investing, and we do a little role play, which is honestly super helpful. We role play like we are new nurses and sitting in orientation, learning about investing in our 401k or our 403b. And then we also do a little role play like we're about to retire and what we need to know and what we need to do to kind of get our ducks in a row for retirement. So this is a super helpful, educational, and informational episode, and I really hope that you guys like it. April, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. So you are a retired nurse living in Australia, and you help nurses transform their financial lives. Can you talk us through your journey from bedside nursing to Nurse Money Date?
Yes, definitely. So started like many nurses with student loan debt from nursing school. That's really
Mhm.
how I got my entry into the financial world. It was out of necessity. I really wanted to pay off those student loans as quickly as I could. So I did that while I was working as a peds ICU nurse. And pretty much any downtime that I had during my shift, out of my shift, I was slowly falling in love with all things money and finance. And like for many nurses, COVID was a real turning point for me, not only professionally, but also personally as well. At that point, I was really burnt out from the profession. And because of the things I set up in the early years of me working as a nurse, I was able to transition and really go all in on this passion of teaching other nurses about money and finance.
So I'm curious, when you say that you were stressed out about your student loans, were you at that time like trying to work extra shifts or how were you handling that?
That definitely led to the burnout for sure, right? Pretty much switching overtime. I would want to do all the holidays, nights, weekends, everything. As soon as I was eligible to, I think it was 2 years, I applied to my hospital's resource float pool. That was an extra,
Mhm.
I don't remember, like $7 an hour. So I was pretty much doing everything I could to make extra money.
And that probably didn't help with your burnout.
Yeah. And truly, what this comes down to is what a lot of nurses face, right? When they're talking about debt, it has the shame around it, right? We
Mhm.
want to view debt as bad, something to get rid of really quickly. And that was definitely the upbringing that I had, right? It's good to save. You are a good nurse if you're saving your money. You are bad if you are accruing debt, even though obviously it was student loans. Uh,
Right.
and one thing I really want to stress is that debt does not have a morality, right? Debt isn't good or bad. It's just an ends to a means. And for me, it was to get me through school.
Yeah. So, what was the moment that you realized that you needed a little bit more freedom than bedside nursing was able to offer?
Yeah, there was definitely a collection of moments for sure. I would say one that jumps out pretty quickly is one of the nurses that was a veteran nurse, 30 plus years of experience, had a lot of seniority on the floor. I saw her get her PTO denied. She was so looking forward to this trip to
Oh,
Hawaii, right? That was one thing where I was like, I don't want to live like that, right?
yeah.
I saw nurses, specifically moms, on the floor being fearful of, am I going to catch my son's soccer game? Right. It was these collection of moments throughout my years of nursing where it was slowly that voice just kept getting louder and louder of, this is not what you want forever. This is truly a stepping stone to have more freedom.
hmm So, money beliefs they're deeply personal, they can be emotional and a little bit taboo to talk about, which is why I think it can be challenging to learn about money. I have
Yeah.
so many positive things to say about my father, but growing up, he always told me, "Oh, Kylie, you don't need to worry about it because you'll marry rich. Like, it's okay, you'll marry rich." And that didn't happen. Also, I didn't get married till I was like 34 years old or 35. So that was really bad advice. And I really, truly still feel like there's so much I need to learn about money. And it's a little bit embarrassing at this age. So I kind of want to dive into your personal beliefs about money. So, how did you start? I know that you mentioned you had debt from nursing school and then you
Yeah.
kind of got interested. But what was like, I guess, the catalyst and where did you start?
Yes, for sure. So, more background on what I heard growing up, right?
hmm
So, first and foremost, I was born in the Philippines, immigrated to the US with my family at the age of 5. I grew up in Chicago. So, it was very much that stereotypical immigrant family mindset: work, 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 save, save, saves. And ultimately, money in our household was always something truly, if we cut through the layers, something to be fearful about, right? We don't want to lose it. We have to protect it. It was never viewed as something that can be the source of freedom, things that could be fun. And so, fast forward to 20 something old April with a full time job, making good money,
hmm
but with this debt I really wanted to pay off. That
hmm
turning point and that starting point for me as a young adult was learning how to have fun with money. I'm laughing as I'm saying this because this really started when, as people do, and they're on their dating apps. And whenever 20, 21 years old, I was swiping, doing my thing. And I'm like, you know what? Can't find a good date. Let me just go on a date with my money. And it was
Okay.
sort of just this funny thing of like, let me take a look at how long it'll take me to pay off my loans. Let me see where my expenses are. And it truly just grew from there to this consistent weekly check in of 10, 15 minutes. Hey, are you getting paid this week? Is there overtime this week? Is that going to go towards this trip that you're going on? Or is it going to go towards this extra debt payoff? Right.
hmm
And that's when everything shifted for me. It was something that I really looked forward to. And it was such a contrast to what I saw growing up of, oh, my mom has to get the notebook out. Is there enough for this? Is there enough for this? Versus me, like, hey, I get to really plan this and have fun with my money and what I want it to do for me.
So is that where nurse money date came from?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's again, it started off really just as a joke, referring to it as these money dates. And since then, I mean, going on 10 plus years, I've been going pretty consistently every single week on these money dates. Obviously, they look different every single week,
Yeah.
but it's been that point for me to say, hey, it happened, whether it's maybe I went over my budget, maybe I didn't do what I wanted with my money, but it's that nice reset point of like, okay, we're reclaiming control of the story. What are we going to do in these next 7 days to get back on track?
Do you remember your first money date you ever went on?
Well, I'm embarrassed to talk about it. I was not sober. I didn't.
Okay. I mean, it can be stressful to like dive into your finances. So I understand.
Yes. So it was just very much like a casual night in my apartment. My roommate was there, had a glass of wine, was just digging in through the numbers. But truly, I think that's such an important piece of this. And this is something
hmm
that I encourage listeners to partake in as well, right? So, what is one thing that you genuinely do enjoy that you look
hmm
forward to? At that time, for me, it was wine.
Yeah.
And pair that with something related to money and finances. So, for example, if you like to work out, do your workout and do your money date right after, right?
Mhm.
It really helps significantly in what you're associating money with and those emotions behind it.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, as a nurse, was there any
Mhm.
mindsets that you had to learn around finances?
Definitely. There were so many. I would say the biggest piece would be, especially as nurses, we have a really interesting perspective on time, right?
Hmm.
The nursing profession, just by the nature of it, trains us to view time as scarce, as limited. We always need to be go, 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 right? So when it
Yeah.
comes to topics like investing for retirement, that nurse mindset seeps in of like, oh, I can just push that off later, push that
Hmm.
off later, right? That was something that was a really good surprise for me once I got to the investment world. Here I was thinking it would take me hours and hours every single week. And I definitely do not want to sugarcoat this. It does take more time in the beginning, of course, because it's a new skill. But the maintenance piece before, I thought it would just take me so long every single week.
Hmm.
But truly getting into it, I'm like, this actually doesn't take that much time to maintain.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, this feels like hours of work. So, okay, good to know. So, I have listened to you on another podcast, and you have said that you are the five people that you surround yourself with, which I have heard before, but you kind of related it back to money. So, can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, truly it comes down to the fact that you can't be what you can't see, right?
Hmm.
And this was very different before the age of the internet, right?
Right.
Now we have the power to curate our feed, right? Our email newsletter, our podcasts that we listen to, right? Truly, if you're not surrounding yourself with the mindset first and foremost, then obviously the strategies around how to build wealth, how to build financial freedom, it truly just feels like a picture that's super blurry, right? When
Mhm.
you hear those ideas, when you hear things about money dates, that picture becomes focused and you're like, oh, I can actually see this reality for myself. So, sure, if you have five people, but I imagine that your audience is very global. If you have five people in your city, great, fantastic. Surround yourself with those people where you're aligned in your financial goals for sure. But if not, the next step is really to curate your digital experience and life to fit the goals that you have.
Yeah, I love that because I agree with that. I haven't thought about it in a money way, but it is
Yeah.
also true. But I do believe that you are who you spend your time with. And I think that it's very important to kind of like keep in mind your company. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that you said that. I'm also curious as you started to learn about money
Mhm.
and, as you started to invest and grow your wealth, did you talk about that to your colleagues on your nursing unit?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Were they intrigued by it? Did people feel threatened by it? Because again, money can be very emotional. How was their response?
Yeah, for sure. I am very lucky when I really started going deep into the finance world, specifically taking classes, getting certifications. The unit I was on, people were amazing. So that
Okay.
definitely is a big part of this. They were very open to hearing about the things that I was doing and very curious and very intrigued. Now, I will
Mhm.
say in my past experience interacting with nurses, for example, and I'm sure you can relate to this with your travel nurse experience when I was working on the float pool and making that extra money, right? You have that
Mhm.
feeling of almost jealousy around it, right? In those environments on certain floors, I didn't feel comfortable having those conversations. But certainly towards the tail end, right before I left the bedside, that floor that I was on, it was a PACU floor. All the nurses were really open to hearing what I was doing and taking that in. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, definitely as a travel nurse, I was obviously getting paid more than the staff nurses. And so, there were times that I experienced some of that like vitriol around like, well, you're making more than me. And I think it's interesting because I was staff in Chicago before I finally
Yeah.
left bedside nursing eventually. And I remember this group of nurses all huddled around a phone. and they're watching another nurse that worked at the hospital, not on our unit, but she was like a TikTok star, I guess. Obviously making money from TikTok. She was awesome. I don't even remember who it was, and I remember them like poking fun and making fun of her. And I just was sitting there thinking that has to stem from jealousy. They're saying, why is she still working as a nurse if she's making so much money? And it's like, she didn't even say she was making so much money. It just, I
Yeah.
don't know, people get funny about money. But let's pivot and talk about what nurses get wrong when it comes to money.
Sure.
So for starters, what is a common complaint? I know that you work with nurses specifically. What's a common complaint that you hear from nurses about money?
Sure. The one that I hear the most consistently, and there's two parts to this. So I'll say this first part and then I'll explain it from a different angle. The thing
Okay.
that I hear a lot from nurses is it's because I'm not making enough money. Okay. The other
Yes.
part of this is yes, do nurses need to make more money? Absolutely. I 1000% am behind nurses making more money. Right. But through the lens of what I do, when we're really looking at the numbers, right, of how much money is coming in and where money is going, nurses quickly realize, yes, more money would be great, but I'm having a really hard time managing $5,000 a month. I'm not even tracking it. I'm not even saving consistently, right? So this is where I come in and I say, hey, we can work on more money, right? But we have to take it step by step. We need to understand how to take care of this money first before you can really welcome $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 in more income. So that's something that I really work through a lot with nurses. And it's a light bulb moment of like, oh, yes, I actually am bringing in enough to have the life that I want.
Hmm. Yeah. What do you wish more nurses knew about money and investing?
The one thing, the most important thing, I always try best to stay away from numbers, but this number is really, really important. And there is something within nurses' retirement accounts, whether you have a 401k, 403b, the word is called expense ratio. That's what you're actually going to see when you log in. All that means is fees. Okay? All that means is fees. So your employer is never going to send you a bill. Hey, Kylie, you owe us this much for investing in this account. That's not how it works. So within the 401k, whatever investment account you have, there's something inside of there that's actually growing the money. Inside of that actual investment, there is a fee. Okay. The number, and just like lab values, it's just something you're going to have to commit to memory. If this number can be zero, amazing, beautiful, perfect. That means you're not paying anything in fees. Really hard to find in a 401k. The number you're shooting for is 0.20% or less. Just to give you some context here, when I open and review this with nurses, their expense ratio, their fees can be as high as 1%. Okay. Connect this back to nursing. The difference between giving zero point 0.1 of a medication versus 0.01, right,
Mhm.
of a med dose, huge. Same exact
Yeah.
thing with money, right? It sounds like a small amount. And that's what a lot of nurses tell me is, oh, that doesn't seem like that big, but we compound it over decades, right, of working as a nurse. And it's pretty significant. And if you don't know to look for it, this is the key thing. If you don't know to look for it, you can't change it. And that's the second part that nurses don't know. I hear this all the time. I'm scared to touch it. I don't want it to
Yeah.
disappear. I just sort of leave it there. Your 401k, your 403b, you can adjust these. You can change the actual investment inside. On average, you have around 20 to 30 different options. Okay. The last piece that I'll say about this is we're moving in the right direction. There are now options for nurses, and I'm seeing it, which is good, that of those 20 to 30 different options, there are investment options that are low cost. That number is low, but that's most of the time not what you're defaulted in.
Okay. So if you are at 1%, how do you
Yeah.
lower the number to
Yeah.
0.2 or less?
This is the good part. if you can order something off Amazon, you can make these changes. All right. So the first piece is just really identifying that, hey, I see that this is really expensive. The shortcut I always tell nurses, if you don't want to dig into your platform, literally call Empower, call Fidelity, call Troubleshot, wherever your employer is investing with, just call them and say, hey, what is my expense ratio? What are these fees that I'm actually paying? If you see that it's high, can you help talk me through switching it to something that's lower cost? Okay. If
Okay.
you are like me and you try to avoid talking on the phone, you can do all of this online. It's very straightforward. It's, hey, I'm invested in this. I want to switch it to this. The most common question I get in this process is, hey, April, am I going to get in trouble? Are there fees? Is something bad going to happen if I switch this? No. Okay.
Okay.
As long as you're not taking the money out and buying a Ferrari, there's no fees. The money is all staying within that account. So you don't have to be worried about, obviously, any sort of penalties or anything like that.
When you're working with nurses, I don't know how to ask it, but like, do you believe in or do you do anything around like mindset and money? Because I believe also that, of course, you need to be knowledgeable, but you also need to kind of have the mindset that you're worthy of more money. I'm curious if you've ever dove into anything like that.
That is 90% of my work. Most nurses enter and they say, hey, I'm here for the strategy. How do I do a rollover? How do I retire early? How do I track my expenses? And of course, I do all those things. But the biggest thing I hear over and over and over with clients at the end is, oh my gosh, I had no idea how much mindset work you were going to do. Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
90% of the work that I do is around the beliefs we have around money, those limiting beliefs of scarcity around money, for example. That's a really big one for nurses. The second biggest thing is self-trust, right? Am I worthy? Can I trust myself to hold these investments, to do these things, right?
Mhm.
So yes, absolutely. That's pretty much a bulk of my work, although obviously we layer in the strategy in there too.
Right. Right now, I'm doing a lot of mindset work around money. So I find that to be interesting. And I have a long ways to go, but so far I feel like I'm seeing positive results. So I'm happy that you said that. Okay. I want to do a little role play and I want to do it two ways. First, we're going to act like we're brand new nurses sitting in orientation. And then I want to talk about like we're getting ready to retire. So
Perfect.
you're a brand new nurse. We're sitting in orientation. HR is there. We are bored out of our minds. We have no clue what they're talking about. We've just gone through a huge handbook of hospital policies, and they bring up, I guess, your 401k, however they, invest your money. So we know nothing about this. Okay. So what is a 401k or a 403b and why is it important?
Sure. The most important thing you need to know about a 401k or a 403b is the tax treatment. Okay. This is basically something you're saving for long-term retirement, right? Decades away, you're probably in your 20s at this point. So you have 30, 40 plus years to save for this. Okay. The most important thing with a 401k is you're putting money in today. You're putting in money today, specifically your employer is pulling money from your paycheck. So you don't see it, right? So it's removed from what you actually can go and enjoy and spend and live your life with, right? That money you will pay taxes on eventually. This is a surprise for a lot of nurses. You're not paying taxes on it today. You're paying taxes on it later. You're deferring taxes in retirement. So I'm going to do just really easy numbers here. If you're making $100,000 a year in 2025 as a nurse, you yourself contribute $10,000 into your 401k. You're not paying taxes on $100,000 this year. You're paying taxes on $90,000. Okay. So you're saving money in taxes today, which are like, great. I'm like, remember, I'm going to come back later.
Okay. So is that the same for a 403b?
Yes, exactly. So ultimately for a 401k, 403b, I always just like to know how things get named. So just come from where it sits in the IRS tax code. That's really just where these names come from. On the nurse's end, they're exactly the same. The tax treatment is exactly the same. Why are the names different? It's really tied to your institution and how your institution is categorized in the eyes of the IRS. Typically, a 403B is if you work for like a nonprofit institution. A 401k is typically your hospital is a for-profit institution for the most part. But pretty much in terms of what you're seeing, 401k, 403B, exactly the same.
Now, not that you would suggest this, but again, you're a brand new nurse. You're sitting there, you're thinking, my hourly rate is shit. I need more money. I don't want to put any money in my retirement account, my 401k or my 403b. That is a possibility. Like you have to choose to put money into it. Is that correct?
Exactly. You have to elect a certain percentage. It's always based off a percentage. Okay. A really key thing here. And again, we're bored out of our mind. What keywords do we need to be looking out for? The word that you want to hear for. And again, most hospitals offer this, not all of them, surprisingly. They offer some sort of match, right? So we hear this all the time. Do the match, do the match. What the heck does that even mean?
Yeah.
All that means is if you do 3%, and this is of your paycheck, right? So 3% could equate to $400. It could equate to $200, just depending on your rate, et cetera. Okay.
Right. Like, so if your paycheck is $1,000 for the week and you choose to put in 3%, that would be $30. I don't know.
You got it.
Okay. Like, shoot. Okay. So you're getting paid $1,000 a week. You say to yourself, I'm going to put in 3% of my paycheck. So every week the hospital takes $30 out of your paycheck before you get it. And you don't even see it gone. It's just in an account for you.
Exactly. Okay. This is a question that nurses don't ask. And this is a really important one. When is that match, that 3%, for example, yours? A really key word here, especially in that boring section of going over your benefits, there's a vesting schedule. This is really important for career planning, right? So a vesting schedule, all that means is, hey, you've been here long enough, you can keep the match, right? Most common I see is 2 years. I have seen it where it is 1 year. So all that means is you do your 3%. If your employer matches, they also do 3%. So in total, you're getting 6% put in. But it is not yours until you're fully vested, right?
Okay.
I love examples. I had a client come to me. She had no idea about this. She was working in the ICU. She was really burnt out. She was like, I can't stay here anymore. So she left. After finding out about this, she was like, shoot, I really did lose thousands of dollars because if I did just stay a couple more months, that match that her employer had could have been hers, right? So to summarize this, the 3% that you put in, always yours. Nothing is happening to that. The match that your employer does, for example, 3%, 4%, that is dependent on you staying at that institution based off of their policy. Again, averages about 2 years.
And what is the average match? 3%?
Yeah. Listen, you're in a really good spot if your employer is offering 6 to 7%. I usually see anywhere between 2 to 3. I haven't really seen anything above 7 to 10%. 10% was for this smaller institution that I've seen, but less than 10%. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you realize that your employer will match 3%. You can still put more than 3% of your paycheck into your 401k, but only 3% of that gets matched. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I do want to call out that this is a nice example. This is a really nice example.
Okay.
Hospitals will do it where it's like, we'll do 1.25 for the first 3%. And then the next 3% that you do, we'll do 2%, right? So just as you're listening to this, understand the concept, but just know that your specific one could look a little different.
So if you personally were that brand new nurse sitting in orientation today, where would you start on your financial journey to set yourself up for success later?
For me specifically, I was living at home. I did not have a car. I was taking that
Okay.
train an hour each
Okay.
way. So that was to the max, basically. And again, I try to avoid giving too many numbers, but there is a max every single year the IRS allows you to put into this account because what are you doing? You're minimizing your taxes in that tax year. So the IRS says, hey, you can only do that to a certain limit. So for me in that room, I would be doing it to the max, just knowing my exact situation. But in general, the more you can invest, the younger you are, the easier time you'll have in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. And that's just understanding how the math maths, right? What you have to
Mhm.
contribute in your 40s and 50s is significantly higher than if you were to do 200 a month, for example, in your 20s.
Do you recommend, again, you're a new nurse at this point
Yeah.
and you're starting at the lowest pay grade. Do you
Yeah.
really recommend at this time to also get into the stock market? Or right now we're kind of just focused on your 401k and getting control of your money, learning about your money, going on money dates?
Yeah. I love this question. When you are putting your dollars into a 401k, 403b, it's already in the stock market. So the
Okay.
best time to learn about it is at that point, right? Where exactly are these dollars going that I'm not seeing
Yeah.
that's getting removed from my paycheck? Generally speaking, what your money is being invested in is not just one company, it's literally hundreds of companies is where your dollars are going to in small, tiny fractions. I hear all the time on social media, it's never too late. And I totally believe that. But what people aren't saying enough is it's never too early. It's never too early to start learning and investing within the stock market.
So now we are retiring. Okay. We're close to retirement. You have been working way too many years and you want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. So, what is a mental checklist you should be going over as you're nearing retirement when it comes to your money?
Sure. One number that's really important for you to know at any point, but especially when you are getting ready for retirement, is your net worth. So, this is basically, I refer to it as your temperature check, right? Where do you stand with your money and finances? So, what is your net worth? It's basically, and I hate to say this, it's your financial value. I want to preface this with your net worth does not speak to your actual worth. This is just us looking at the numbers. Okay.
Right.
And so, how do we get to this number? I love when the math is simple and straightforward. So, it's basically what things do you own that have value? Let's say you have a 401k. Again, I'm going to stick to easy numbers and it's $100,000 in there. Okay. You just take all the things that you own that have value. We call that your assets. And we simply subtract your liabilities. Again, I'll use easy numbers. Let's say you have $50,000 in student loans. So we take that 100,000 and subtract it from that 50. So your total net worth is your assets, what you own minus what you owe, your liabilities. So in this example, it's 50,000. Why is this so important? Especially when you're trying to retire. You need to understand where you stand financially, right? How much do I actually have for retirement versus what do I actually own? Do I have that mortgage? Do I have that car payment? Do I have that credit card debt? It's one thing to just look at your investments. It's another thing to understand it in relation to your debts.
Okay. So,
How you doing, Kylie? I know we're talking a lot of numbers.
I'm like, I know, I'm like, okay. So when you retire, do
Yeah.
you automatically, I mean, there's so much that I don't personally know. And I feel like if we actually dove into everything, it'd take us days. But do you at this time take your money out of your 401k or?
I think this is such a good question, right? Like, what actually happens? How do I pay myself? Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
basically, upon retirement, you have options, is the short answer, right? You can choose to take it all at once. That is not smart. That is not smart to do it all at once. What most people do, what most retirees do, is they set up a schedule. Okay. let me just tie this back to the weekly money dates. Okay, this is your foundation of understanding money is coming in. Where is my money going? That is such a foundational skill. When we talked about a foundational skill of nursing, it's your assessment skills. You need to have that to survive and thrive as a nurse. To thrive with your money and finances, you need to have that foundational skill. Why? Especially for retirement, you quite literally are paying yourself. Okay.
Mhm.
So instead of that 3% going in every single paycheck, what actually happens during retirement, you walk into the same account and you say, okay, it's time to pay myself. Right.
Okay.
So all you do from there is set a transfer to your checking account and live off of these investments that you've been accruing for decades.
So at this point too, I imagine, versus a new grad, there's a lot more people in relationships. And my husband, Julian, and I think of money very differently. He is
Yeah.
definitely the saver and I'm definitely the spender. It caused a little bit of, arguments in the early stages of our relationship, and it's a lot better now. But I'm curious if you have any advice for couples that maybe don't agree about money.
Yeah. First and foremost, there's the experience of money that we're having, aka maybe we're disagreeing. But the next layer is what story am I attaching to that experience, right?
Mhm.
One experience could be, hey, we're disagreeing. The story could be, oh my goodness, does he not trust me? Does he think that I'm X, Y, and Z, right? Another story, and this is the story I tell myself, because me and my husband disagree every single day.
Okay.
The story I say is, this is fun, right? I'm with somebody who is not an exact copy of me, right? I'm so grateful that I'm in a relationship where someone is challenging me, forcing me to
Mhm.
think differently about myself and forcing me to grow and adjust, right? So I think the foundation here is, what story are we telling ourselves about the fact that we are different? Side note, super common. 90% of couples are in that opposing saver spender, right? So
Mhm.
super normal, super common to be in that type of relationship. My number one thing, again, going back to those weekly money dates, is make it fun. Okay.
Mhm.
So much of what I see, especially when I work with couples, right? These are couples who have been married for 30 plus years. These are couples who are newlyweds. These are couples who are engaged, all the way to, hey, we're just combining our finances. How do we do this?
Mhm.
The best thing you can do is to really have fun together with your money and finances. When my husband and I were first starting this whole combining finances, our money dates were quite literally a date, right?
Okay.
We would go out, we would do something fun, cook dinner together, prime ourselves to be our best selves before we enter this conversation about money. Okay. The last piece I'll say is manage your expectations. It's not normal. It's not normal for you guys to agree about everything. That allows you to see your partner with a lot of forgiveness if you have that
Mhm.
expectation. I could go on, but I think those are really good foundations to start off with.
I like that, especially about priming yourself to be your best self.
Yes, because it's
Yeah,
so easy to not.
exactly. Okay, I got some questions from my audience. So, what, in your opinion, is best long-term investments for young professionals?
Yes, what I educate and coach my clients on, and nurses oftentimes have heard this word before, but they don't know what it means. So the best long-term investment is essentially an index fund, an ETF, right? Have you
Okay.
heard of those before, lingering in the financial
I
world?
have. Yes.
Yeah. So ultimately, in a nutshell, it's not saying, hey, NVIDIA, Tesla, Apple, it's not essentially stock picking. It's investing in hundreds of companies. And you can do that with investing in one fund. The second answer that I have, and this is really coming from the lens of me retiring, leaving the bedside, becoming an entrepreneur. When I look back, yes, I have investments in the stock market. When I really think about the best investments that I've made, I've invested a lot of money into my business. When I really look back, it's, and it's funny that I'm saying this on a podcast, I hate public speaking. So I
Okay.
invested a lot in a speaking coach to how to explain my ideas. And
You
so
are
that,
very well spoken. I was going to tell you that at the end of this podcast, but now feels like an appropriate time. So,
oh my gosh, thank you so much. But the reason why I think that has a direct tie to how much money you can make, if you are doing all the things as a nurse, you're doing the committees, you're staying late, you're doing all the things, but if you can't communicate your worth to your manager, how are you going to get a raise? Right. And so
totally
when I really think high level of the coach or the thing that I've invested in that's really moved the needle forward, it's truly in mastering the skill of communication and public speaking.
amazing. I love that. Should I save for retirement now or have fun now? That was another question.
You can have both. You can have both.
Okay.
And I know this, I'm repeating this over and over, but the reason why I love those weekly money dates is you can blend two things together. And this is so common with nurses. We want an easy, I'm doing this now or I'm doing this now. We're very all or nothing, right? If I'm going to pay off my debt, I'm going to do it aggressively. If I'm going to invest, I'm going to invest aggressively. With your weekly money dates, you can say, hey, I actually have an extra $300 left over, right? I actually want to spend $200 on having fun, enjoying my life.
Mhm.
On $100, I'm going to invest this week, right? So the wrong question is, what am I losing? The right question is, what can I gain this week on my weekly money date?
Yeah. How much should I save in each decade of life? I'm assuming you're
Ooh.
not going to give me like a black and white answer, but
Yeah. No, listen, a good rule of thumb, and this is specifically for traditional retirement. What is traditional retirement? They keep increasing it, but 65. Okay.
okay.
65 traditional retirement. Obviously, this number is going to be a lot higher if you're shooting for early retirement, right? So for traditional retirement in your 60s, at least 10% of your paycheck. Again, it's easier in percentages. So starting off at 10% when you start working, assuming you're in your 20s, and gradually increasing with every decade. Okay. Very
Okay.
normal. If you're creeping up to your 40s, 50s, that number is closer to 20%. What these platforms will sometimes do is they'll automatically increase it based off your age. They'll say, hey, you've been doing 10%. You should bump it to 12, etc. Because
Okay.
they obviously understand your age within the platform as well. So 10% if you're just starting off in your career. And then obviously the more the merrier.
So the best ways to invest, just to kind of put a pretty
Yeah.
bow on it, would be your 401k or your 403b. And ideally, you're putting the amount that the hospital's matching.
Yep.
And then in the stock market, you said EFTs, like a long-term
Yep.
ETF. Okay,
ETFs.
ETF,
Yep. You got it. And then index funds.
index
The
funds.
most important thing, again, if you are listening and you remember one thing, when you do the 3%, whatever percentage, go in and check those fees. The numbers are wild. This truly equates to, and I've done the math for tons of clients, it's a small percentage equates to hundreds and thousands of dollars over the course of your lifetime. So remember that number I said, the one number for you to memorize, that expense
Yeah.
ratio, that quite literally will save you hundreds and thousands of dollars by paying attention to that fee as early as you can.
Do you feel fulfilled helping nurses now the way that you felt fulfilled as a bedside nurse?
Whew, does it feel better?
This was my own question, not an audience question.
Oh my gosh.
You
No, I
feel
feel
better.
so
Okay.
much better. I worked in peds, so I'm like, I miss the babies. I miss giving
Yeah.
a good night shift bed bath.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I come from a family of nurses, right? My mom is a nurse. My sister's a travel nurse. It's so fulfilling and rewarding to me to take care of nurses. And that's just such a gift to do that. But in addition, to be able to do that on my terms, on my
Mhm.
schedule, where I want to, when I want to. So honestly, I'm way more fulfilled than I thought I could be, which is fun to actually say out loud.
Yeah. What surprised you about transitioning from the hospital to entrepreneurship?
Sure. I don't want to dampen the mood. But honestly, I didn't realize how hard it was because, again, the
Mhm.
ego that you have as a nurse is like, I'm saving lives. I'm doing the hardest thing. And my
Mhm.
husband has an office job. So anytime I would come home from, a really long shift, I'm like, oh, you sat on
Yeah.
an email, you sat in a meeting, like how hard, right? So I just
Yeah.
had no clue, truly. So I think the biggest surprise for me truly was how challenging it would be. And I would say specifically how hard it would be to break out of that mindset of being a nurse. When I became an entrepreneur, everything felt urgent. I was safe in my apartment in front of my computer, but my brain didn't know that, right? I'm like, I need to get these emails out before I use the bathroom. I'll eat lunch when I'm done doing this, whatever thing. So that's the part that I think surprises a lot of entrepreneurs. They think, oh, I'll leave the bedside and my life will be fixed because nursing was the source of X, Y, and Z thing. But truly, it's building those healthy habits, right? So truly that was a lot of work. Or let's
Yeah.
just say that.
If there's a nurse listening right now who feels stuck financially or emotionally or professionally, what advice would you give to them?
I would say take a really good look at what you've already accomplished. The thing that my clients tell me that I immediately call them out on is I want to become, right? I want to fix. You don't need to fix anything. You need to return to who you are. You already have all those skills inside you. If you're listening, you're most likely a nurse. You know how to think critically. You know how to manage your time, but you do this all the time within your profession. So if you're feeling stuck, what I really urge you to do is really reflect on everything that you've accomplished. Money and finance, I pinky promise, is way easier than a shift as a nurse. So truly lean into the skills that you already do have because if you can be a nurse, and if you are a nurse, I pinky promise you, you can do all the things you want to achieve with your money.
What does financial freedom mean to you?
It's definitely changed. But at this point, to me, financial freedom, at this point of where I am in my life, in my business, financial freedom no longer, and it used to be for many years, financial freedom used to be a number that I wanted to see in my accounts. Now, today, financial freedom is a feeling. And that
Mhm.
feeling is I'm waking up and I'm doing something hard and challenging that I am choosing and I'm in control of those circumstances. That to me is financial freedom instead of a number that I see when I check my bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. What does clocking out look like for you now?
Oh, clocking out to me now, living in Australia is a lot of fun. I mean, there are just so many things that I can do now that was just a dream, honestly, as a kid growing up in Chicago with really, really cold winters. For
Mhm.
example, this weekend we went to the beach and we just saw whales
Yeah.
breaching and doing their thing.
But
So a lot of travel.
it's winter there right now in Australia?
Yes, which I find
Okay.
so funny because winter here in
Yeah.
Australia is basically a perfect fall day in Chicago. So the
Okay.
winters
Okay.
here
Oh, I
are
love that.
lovely. Yes, you have like cute outfits. You're not like doing the whole bundle with stars.
Yeah.
So the weather is really lovely.
Are you in Sydney? Is that
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
Correct.
What's
That
your
was my
favorite?
non-negotiable.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place to travel in Australia?
Oh, it's honestly Sydney. I
Okay.
traveled up north, I traveled south. I have not gone west yet. But every time I see another part of Australia, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is great. But I'm so happy I live in
In
Sydney.
Sydney.
Yes, there's a really good balance of beach, city, culture. All the other places fall too far for me personally on the
Yeah.
nature spectrum. If you're into
Right.
that, great. But I'm very much a city girl.
How long have you lived in Australia now?
It'll be 3 years this November, which is
Have
wild to
Have
think
you
of.
noticed any cultural differences? Especially like cultural differences around money. I mean, I don't know if you're talking to Australians about money
Oh
there,
my
but
gosh. I have so many things to say about this. Just the fact, student loans are a completely different thing here. Like,
Right.
to follow what they're doing, but I think that'll be too long to explain. I would say the biggest shift, and honestly, a big reason truly of why I think I've been so successful in business is just the overall culture, the work culture, how work is viewed culturally is so different. I would imagine very similar in Europe as well. People take their time off. People's identity is not attached to their work. And so that was a big shift for me and my husband, who's also obviously working here too. And that's significantly impacted how we spend our money. In the US, we were such savers, which is good. I don't regret doing that.
Mhm.
But especially in Australia, we're really leaning into spending the money that we worked really hard for. And I think that really speaks to the environment that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that too. Because I'm in France right now, so it's very similar. I've probably
Yeah.
been more so relaxed around work here, but
Yes.
okay. I like to ask people at this time to kind of pause and really think about, where do you hope to be in 5 years, professionally, personally, financially? And do you feel like you are taking those steps right now to reach your 5 year goal?
I would say confidently, yes. The really big piece that's on my mind, and I spent a lot of time as of late talking about this in my community, is this year for me personally, health wise, financial wise, has really been preparing for trying to start a family next year. Right.
Okay.
So, really hope for that to be in my picture in the next 5 years for sure. Professionally, I really found the rhythm. And I think this was so hard for me at the beginning. I finally found the rhythm of work and the volume of work that I really enjoy. So I don't want any changes there. I just really want to keep that consistent. Again, going back to being in Australia, I think that's really fed these questions of, I could be doing well in business, but am I doing well in a way that's sustainable?
Right.
So that's definitely been a really big focus for me, especially this year in preparing for hopefully being a mom, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Before I ask where people can find you, I want to give you
Mhm.
a plug. So I signed up for your newsletter, your email newsletter, and anybody listening, I would highly suggest it because it is very good and you share tips in your newsletter and I really enjoy it. So where can people find you and how can people sign up for your newsletter?
Oh, so sweet. Thank you so much for that plug. Super easy. Everything, whatever socials you're on, everything is Nurse Money Date. Where I am most active is Instagram at Nurse Money Date. And then you can find all the things on my website, which is just nursemoneydate.com.
And if you guys are thinking about, getting more knowledge about finances, your website is a really good place to go. And you have both paid and free resources, which I appreciate. So I would recommend that. And thank you so much, April, for educating us and talking to us today.
Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Clocked Out, Life Beyond the Bedside. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a fellow nurse who needs to hear it. For more on thriving beyond the bedside, make sure to follow along on Instagram and check out Passports and Preemies, where we talk travel, wellness, and building a life that works for you.